This little film, I'm going to talk to you about how exactly you might go about creating a well-structured and coherent argument in your essay. Okay, particularly in the type of essay which asks to what extent. If you're doing the AQA A level, this hits criteria such as use of a well-structured and coherent argument. It is also relevant with very sharp focus on task. And it also hits down here perceptive consideration of different interpretations of texts with sharp evaluation of their strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so basically it's an absolutely crucial part of your essay writing, and you can't do really well unless you've got a clear argument, a clear structure. Okay, most importantly, you have to get your title right. You have to come up with a title that works. Okay, and that means one that's focused. It's got a key, precise aspect of the poem that it's looking at, and that there's plenty or enough to say about that title. So, for example, when we looked at the Tony, here we go. So, how far do you agree that Harrison has suggested that the working classes are silenced in their manners? This one has worked well in the past. It's got the how far do you agree bit, but it's also got this sense of silencing, which is interesting. So that really good essays about this are all about silencing, about the idea of what it means to be silenced in this context. What meanings about silencing can you bring out? Weaker essays will tend to just write quite generically about the way the working classes are sort of, trodden down, or the way that they're oppressed, or the way that they're badly treated. The better essays will focus specifically on ideas of silencing, on having a voice or not having a voice, on being able to speak and make contributions to society or not being able to do that. Okay, so how do you come up with a structured argument? Well, advice would be to just try and generate a logical argument, to generate, to know very, very well before you start and plan through your logical ideas. This is Aristotle. I mean, Aristotle obviously was interested in logic and thought a lot about logic. There's two things really I'll bring to your attention that he particularly focused on. One is the idea of cause and effect, which is the idea that sort of arranging your arguments by saying, because this happens, because X happens, Y happens. Also, Aristotle was interested in the idea of division, which is to say, dividing up your argument into different sort of categories, into different parts. This becomes easier when I show you an example. So here's some logical arguments, some cause and effect arguments to address the title I looked at. How far are working class voices silenced? Or how far does the poem suggest that they're silenced? To argue that they are silenced, using cause and effect, you could argue, okay, because Harrison's identity is changed by the times at the end, it shows that working class people can't maintain a voice. That when they try to do so, when they try to not be silenced, they are silenced by being sucked up into the sort of middle classes, I suppose. So because this happens, it shows this. Alternatively, because they're not allowed to take part in great drama, this shows that they are silenced. And I'm thinking here about the bit with where he's forced to be, they're not given, so Harrison at school is not given the more, the major parts in Shakespeare. He's forced to be the drunken porter in Macbeth. So there's two cause and effect points which you could make to support this side of an argument. What could you make to support the idea that they're not silenced? Okay, because Harrison finds his voice, he shows that silencing can be overcome. Because Tony Harrison himself has this sort of personal journey where he overcomes the oppression that he experiences in his education to become a poet. He shows he's living proof that silencing can be overcome. Okay? Another idea might be because they're given some roles in drama, for example, the drunken porter, the working classes aren't silenced. It's not silencing exactly that happens to them. It's more a case of them being directed and sort of marginalised, pushed to realms of low influence. Interesting to think about why it might be. What are the implications that working class people aren't sort of capable of performing roles to that level of emotion, that level of sort of how do you express it? That kind of emotional, spiritual significance. So therefore, they only have to do the funny bits. Okay. Now, there's much more you could say, and they're not necessarily the best points to make about this poem and this title. But what I'm trying to model for you here is just the idea that you should be able to go through your essay and describe your points in a because of this, it suggests this. Because of this, it suggests this. Okay? Can you do that? And if you don't, you need to put a bit more thinking into it. On top of that, you need to think about your topic sentences or thesis statements. Same thing, same idea. Your points, the sentence that you make, that you construct to start your points. An example might be, one feature which may suggest that the working classes are silenced is Harrison's treatment of proletarian access to high culture through education. Now that would be quite a good topic sentence in the sense that it's got that sense of argument and debate. One feature which may suggest that the working classes are silenced is, okay, and it also uses this key idea of silencing. It's very explicit, and then you could write a paragraph which goes on to explore that. Another way of doing the same thing really would be, it could be said that Harrison explores attitudes to literature as a way of suggesting that the working classes are silenced. All right, so you've got that debate again. It could be said, it could be suggested. It might be inferred that Harrison does that. Okay, so making sure your topic sentences are really clear and really focused is a good way to create a structured argument. Remember then, doing it well by A, coming up with a good question, B, sharply focusing on the specific ideas of the question, having topic and concluding sentences to each paragraph which focus on the question. And I suppose what I've missed off here is using logic, using sort of cause and effect, making sure that you're clear about what the logic of your argument is before you start writing. You should be able to get your essay and explain it to somebody else in terms of picking out the key points of your argument. And then, of course, in terms of your sophistication, well, you can add all your contextual references, or your references to language, structure and form and things like that. So each of these points, if you took this, would be massively developed by the explanation that you put into them. But your core argument needs to be really, really clear and really, really sort of straightforward in your own mind.